Entrepreneurial husband, burned out and unable to work, leaves me contemplating a physically demanding job for stability and future planning. Basically, the last decade has largely been focused on achieving financial independence. I had never been a very business-oriented person until I met my husband. He is extremely entrepreneurial and his passion for it is catching. We have run our own businesses together and separately throughout our marriage. The goal has always been to make enough money on location-independent businesses we can live freely. Not necessarily retire, but have more freedom. Because of his encouragement, I am now on a career path that could easily result in that. In 10 years, we have moved 25 times, all because better opportunities have presented themselves or current opportunities have dried up. We're now facing number 26 with number 27 not far away because number 26 doesn't look like that good of a prospect. Without giving away details, my business fluctuates greatly. I've had months where I pull in mid-five figures and long stretches of a few hundred. My career outside of this is food service with a very definite wage ceiling. My husband's career is professional and he can easily find a six-figure salary position. His current online business currently brings in low four figures. We have always relied on his going back to work when money runs low. He's in high demand, can practically snap his fingers and get a job. I cannot. Here's the conflict, and where I'll try to eliminate as much of my bias as possible. My husband is completely burned out. He physically and emotionally can't deal with the stress of going to work right now. He has supported me through the last couple years when my income has been low. I've always been aware of my financial contribution and make up for it by carrying the grand majority of the household chores, even when I was working 60+ hours as a manager, and pulling in half his wage. But as our savings are dwindling, it's looking more and more like I'll have to get a job. That means pushing my business to the back burner, working a physically demanding job, all for a quarter of the pay he could get. I'm not one to spend money. We didn't have a wedding. We bought my wedding band 3 years after we got married. I cut my own hair. I work from home in sweatpants. It's not as though I've forced him to work jobs he hates in order to provide me with an extravagant lifestyle. I have worked shit jobs to help provide for us in the past, and even when my business isn't earning a ton, I still put in 50+ hours a week. I'm craving stability. Not permanence, just the feeling that I can unpack our boxes and not feel like I should save them in a closet knowing in 6 to 9 months I'll need them again. We've been child-free for years, but the last couple years the topic has been coming up more and more. Yet I feel it's impossible to even discuss the idea of starting a family in the face of such uncertainty. I miss my cats, they're living with my parents overseas. I want a fish tank and a place to hang pictures. He says, if you want those things, then make them happen. Which, fair enough. I completely agree with. I don't want to rely on him to provide the life I want, however it leaves me feeling a combination of emotions I can't really put a word to. I find myself going through mental exercises of, what would I do in this situation if I were single? How would I support myself? And I start to feel resentful. I'm not single. I'm married. And not only that, I'm not sure I can make enough money to support us. I desperately want him to find what it is he's meant to do. I don't care about the money or the dreams of financial independence if it means he's miserable trying to get there. He's been trying to work out which direction to change to for the past year and has yet to come up with anything solid. I know it's all about give and take, but I can't help but feel. I don't know. I don't have the words. And I'm at a complete loss as to how we resolve this. We go back and forth when it comes to the full-time employment. Because of his high salary and short lifespan when working, it's been more like 6 months on, several months off. But there is always a side business. Always, lol. When I say savings are dwindling, there is a lump of money in the savings account that we never, ever touch and treat as the rock bottom. We never get close to that amount, so in my mind, what we have to live off in savings is running out. When we budget, we don't feel like we're doing well unless we're able to put money away at the end of the month. After 10 years of working, we are definitely not where either of us would like to be. That's not to say the experiences and ups and downs weren't worth it. I honestly don't think it's in my husband to buckle down with a 9-to-5 job and squirrel away money for retirement. I have always been happy to help him pursue his goals of owning/running his own businesses because I have faith in him. Update 1. I'm writing partly to sort all this out in my head and partly for outside perspectives. I don't even know what to think anymore. Again, I'm happy to explain any details that need fleshing out if it helps. I'll try to be concise and I truly appreciate your reading. 9 months ago, I posted asking for help about my frustration with going back to work after my husband burned out in his career, previous post in my history. For the sake of anonymity, I tried to be vague with the details and many thought our work was on the dodgy side. I don't care about keeping it anonymous. All these factors are relevant. I'm an author, I self-published books and made a decent living doing it for several years. My husband is a software developer and mainly buys existing online companies, and fixes them up to sell. When that's not working, he tries to work a normal 9-to-5, but typically lasts no more than 6 months. His last attempt was 1 day. My career before this was in the food industry, which means crap pay, long hours and very sore feet. I got a job that pays 95% of the bills, the rest is covered by savings. Yeah, I'd rather be working for myself, but I like it. I'm good at it. It's the first time I actually enjoy going to work. For the last few months, I've been slowly changing and it feels like my husband and I are drifting apart. At first I thought it was a natural phase, things will definitely feel different compared to working under the same roof all day and night. Now, I don't know. From the previous thread, he says, if you want those things, then make them happen. Which, fair enough. I completely agree with. I don't want to rely on him to provide the life I want, however it leaves me feeling a combination of emotions I can't really put a word to. I find myself going through mental exercises of, what would I do in this situation if I were single? How would I support myself? And I start to feel resentful. I'm not single. I'm married. And not only that, I'm not sure I can make enough money to support us. I am making enough money to support us and it feels good. It's given me confidence in a way I haven't had before. But, it's also made something glaringly obvious in our relationship. We disagree on just about everything and we have very little in common. I'm happy to work on my writing on the side while I work. He thinks I've given up on our dream and have settled for a world, the 9-to-5, MF world, he is loath to spend time in. He sold his business and is still figuring out what he wants to do next. I want to buy a flat in the city. He wants to move to the country, or use our savings to travel or live remotely. I want to settle for a while and make friends. He thinks there's plenty of time for that in the future. I want to make our home cozy and put up decorations like photos and artwork. While he likes it, he thinks of it all as just pointless stuff we shouldn't waste money on. I could go on, but you get it. It feels like literally everything I like, he hates. I've also realized that most of the moves, most of the big decisions were things I went along with. I'm not saying he bullied me or anything, just that I didn't feel too strongly one way or the other, so tended to go with what he wanted. Of course we talked about it, but it rarely was me pulling in the bulk of the income, so I didn't feel like I had much of a say. Now I feel strongly about a life direction and have the ability to make it happen, and I feel guilty? He says I've changed, that he's the same as he's been, wants the same things he's always wanted. This is me altering the situation, which I agree with. But it's not like it's this massive bait and switch plan. Our entire marriage I've talked about settling down. I'm rambling. Here's the way I see it. We both love each other and genuinely want to make the other happy, which is why over 10 years, we've both compromised on choices that go against what we individually want. He goes to work for a little while so I can have a semi-stable home. I bounce around the world with him so he can discover himself and his career. But our tolerance for these periods have become too short to manage. He physically can't work for another person. I want to scream when I think about packing up my stuff and starting over again. Have we just spent so much of our marriage being distracted by the exciting newness of moving and pushing for financial independence, we didn't notice how little we have in common otherwise? I can't help but feel like this is on me, not my fault, per se, but on my shoulders. I'm the one rocking the status quo, and if I want things to balance out, it's up to me to adjust my expectations. Before I get lost in my own selfish thoughts, I want to wish you luck with your businesses. It's not easy, and I have loads of love for people who hustle for their passion. Smile. The friends and roots things is a real sore point for me. Our whole marriage we've been firmly child-free. The last 2 years, we had a last blast of are we actually sure we're sure, which threw up a lot of discussions about the future and what we envision. We're sure. No kids. But that means if I want a network of people near and around me, I have to work to make that happen. I have no family and his family is ambivalent about seeing each other. All my friends have become acquaintances because of the moving. I see this lonely life ahead of me with no one in it, and that scares me. I just wish, and I know how ludicrous it sounds as I write it, but I just wish the normal life he could build with me would be enough for him. We could have an amazing, stable life full of traveling and friends and everything people dream of. But he sees getting a job as trading his life, his time, for money. And that's not a deal he wants to make. Update 2. Maybe this follow-up will give people the bravery to change, or at least an example of how sticking with what you know isn't always the best choice. An obviously very long story short, with the help of those posts and a lot of long nights of thinking, I left my husband. In fact, it took him going away for a long weekend to realize how much happier and at peace I felt without him around. At first the split was amicable, but looking back I think he was just waiting for me to come rushing back to him once I realized my mistake. When that didn't happen and he could see I was actually serious about building a new life for myself, a switch flipped. We only spoke when he needed something from me, and eventually that stopped too. Enough about him. I'm now 42, happier and healthier and more satisfied than I've been my whole life. I picked me, and that was the best choice I could have ever made. I lived alone for the first time, and my God, the peace of having my own space. Unrivaled. I ended up staying in that apartment for 5 years, not a moving box in sight. I put art on the walls, I knew my neighbors. I made a home. I grew my career and went back to school. Made friends, built a little community. I've done a ton of therapy and realized that the abusive patterns my parents created in childhood were just repeating with my ex. I fell in love, a real love, a supportive love that encourages growth and security. I'm doing new work that helps people and is so much more than just chasing money. All of those things have created a life that's more rewarding than I ever thought possible for myself. I've gone through some really shitty times too, illness, cancer scares, deaths, loss. But I have no idea how I would have come out the other side without the community I built around me. Even something as simple as people at your local coffee shop recognizing you as a comfort after feeling adrift and alone for so long. Anyway, if I were to respond to myself from 7 years ago, this is what I would say. Leave the loser. He doesn't care about you, never did. He only cares about what you can do for him, and now that you aren't serving him, well, just go. You are capable of doing difficult things, and you are worthy of the work it takes to accomplish them. Trust your abilities, trust your gut. It's been screaming at you for years now, honey. Life can be so much more than you've experienced, but you have to make it happen for yourself. Update 3. I can't believe I'm sitting down to write this, and I never would have thought I'd be here, metaphorically and literally. Possibly the strangest part is how normal everything feels now, even though the last few months have been the opposite of normal for me. I'm typing this in a sunlit kitchen that overlooks a leafy back garden, not a rental, not a stopover, not somewhere I'm itching to leave, but the house I actually own. The absurdity still catches me when I get a mortgage statement in my name, or when the neighbors call out to me on the street. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The last update glossed over a lot, so much was new, painful, and raw then. I was learning how to be single at 40 plus, how to be truly self-reliant. But so much has happened since then. I've kept building my own life, not only in those quietly monumental ways like opening my own bank account or picking a couch just because I liked it, but also in ways I never saw coming. First, that thing about people at the coffee shop knowing my order? That blossomed beyond just casual recognition. One of the baristas, a woman with forearms covered in line work tattoos and a penchant for philosophical chat, struck up a real friendship with me. We'd sit on the patio after her shift and talk well into the night, about grief, about roots, about the weirdness of building new friendships as adults. Before I knew it, she'd introduced me to her book club, a fiercely welcoming group who read, gossiped, and ate unholy amounts of cheese, and suddenly, Thursday nights became sacred. I have regulars in my life now, people I show up for and who show up for me, and not a single one came from my old life with my ex. Second, a professional pivot, again. I never thought of myself as someone who could start something. Businesses were always his thing, but a friend of a friend drew me into what's now become my new full-time gig. It's wild. I'm helping other midlife women navigate massive transitions that look a lot like mine, using writing and storytelling workshops as a sort of gentle therapy. It started almost by accident, sharing my story in intimate circles, answering DMs from other women who were feeling stuck, trapped in inertia, scared of what real change would mean. But it snowballed. Now I run online courses, I moderate a support forum, and, honestly, I feel more like myself in this role than I ever have before. This brings me to the biggest update. I bought a house. Let me be perfectly clear, I didn't buy it with Lake Como royalties or six-figure windfalls. I bought it after years of steady working, budgeting, saving, the most boring story in the world until you realize every single decision was truly mine. It's nothing massive, just a little Victorian terrace with uneven floorboards and the world's tiniest back garden, but it has space for the things that matter to me. A roomy desk by the window, my battered piano, and, wait for it, 2 deeply spoiled rescue cats. My parents, bless them, finally retired overseas and said I could give a good home to their elderly pair. I've since adopted another, despite my supposed quiet life. Strangely, I've leaned into permanence. I'm nesting, hosting dinner parties, obsessing over houseplants, making friends with my elderly neighbor who insists I taste test her famous lemon drizzle cake. I know the thought of this would have horrified the old me, but it's like after years of packing and running, my gums are aching for everything I used to think was pointless stuff. Turns out, stability isn't boring when it's chosen. The relationship side is a saga, but also very simple. I'm dating someone new, a chef who runs charity pop-up kitchens. Picture the opposite of my ex, calm, funny, and deeply committed to community. They're rooted here and made me realize that roots can be gentle, not constricting. We travel, but we come home. They understand what it meant to need independence and what it means to have a place to bring people together, not to shut the world out. I should also say, the last year wasn't perfect. I had a health scare, benign, but it put the wind through me, lost another family member, and had a falling out with someone I thought was a close friend. For a minute, I wanted to run, but therapy and time made me realize I was building something real, and I didn't need to disappear anymore. Still, I keep a shoebox of moving box labels tucked in an old drawer, just to remind myself how far I've come. So, what's the craziest part to me? That out of what sometimes felt like an endless spin cycle of what ifs and maybe never, I've found myself steadfastly here. It's not always fireworks, sometimes it's only the quiet clink of teacups or the click of a cat's paws down the hall. Yet I've come to realize there's more adventure in this steadiness than there ever was in perpetual motion. I finally feel like I belong, not just to a place, but to myself, and to the web of strangely tangled, beautiful people that now fill my life. Update 4. If you'd told me even last year that I'd be sitting here writing another update, I would have rolled my eyes. Surely that story ended with walking into my creaky little house and tossing the last moving box into the recycling. But, for reasons I'm still untangling, life has kept twisting, turning, and tossing out curveballs, in ways that are somehow quieter and more dazzling than before. So let me tell you what's happened. To start, the 2 rescue cats have multiplied. Not because my two decided to start a family, they're far too old for that chaos, thank God, but because I foster now. It started when the local shelter sent out an SOS about an orange tabby with a penchant for biting anyone who tried to pet him, but who could apparently be tamed by classical piano music. Enter me, half-heartedly plunking out minor chords at 2 a.m., this goblin cat perched like a gargoyle on my shoulder, purring like a motorcycle engine. 3 months later, that same little menace was curled up on my lap during Zoom calls and chasing sunbeams with the senior cats. I foster failed twice, my ragtag feline trio is healthy, if noisy, and some days, that's all the adventure I want. But, wildly, the house didn't become a monument to stillness. Against all odds, it's become a semi-public space. The book club outgrew my dining table, so now our group meanders between my house, the tattooed barista's backyard, and a rotating cast of new acquaintances. If you open my fridge any given Saturday, there's a 50-50 chance of finding artisan tapenade beside last night's takeout container, and you might trip over a stray guitar or someone's oblivious boyfriend asleep on my couch. I host writing salons now. I don't mean that in a wine and cheese, everyone reads their piece sort of way, though, sometimes, we try and end up laughing hysterically at the earnestness of it all. It's more like a salon in the 18th century sense, a gathering place for ideas, for stories, and for the kind of laughter that comes from feeling fully, stupidly yourself. My work evolved, too. Running those workshops with other women, helping them find their voice and uncover what's hiding under all the expectations and fears, started to fill me up more than I ever thought work could. It started with online groups, but one of my women happened to be a city councilor's assistant and, before I could second guess myself, she'd nominated me for a local civic award for resilience and community connection. I spent a week convinced they'd made a mistake. When I nervously gave my little speech in the town hall, I looked up and saw my book club holding a sign covered in hand-drawn cats, and I just burst out laughing at the absurdity of it all. And it turns out, my little side business doesn't feel small anymore. My writing courses got picked up for a series of in-person retreats in a nearby national park. Somehow I became the inspirational speaker I used to mock, affectionately, when my ex dragged me to self-help webinars. But it's real, and it's a privilege, and it pays the bills better than I could have dreamed, and better, honestly, than some of my ex's unicorn side hustles ever did. Here's where it gets really crazy. Remember the chef I mentioned? Her pop-up kitchen charity hit huge press when a celebrity food YouTuber filmed an episode there. Suddenly, we were both wheeling hot pans of food onto a makeshift stage while volunteers sobbed and cheered in equal measure. We went on a local radio segment to talk about food insecurity and found ourselves thrown into a community garden project. Now my weekends are sometimes spent up to my elbows in rosemary and tomatoes, with sunburnt local kids running around underfoot, the chef shouting at me for overwatering the basil. Of course, there have been more twists, some painful, some sweet, and some just deeply, weirdly adult. My parents sold their house overseas for good, and after years of phone calls and sparse visits, decided to move minutes from my door. I was nervous, the old wounds barely scabbed over, but distance had softened them, and proximity allowed a kind of repair I'd resigned myself never to find. My mom now comes to my writing salons. She bakes excellent scones, she never comments, too much, on the clutter. There's still tension, but these days, it lives in the background, quieter than the sound of cats scrapping over a sunbeam. Oh, one more thing. The stability that I used to crave has transformed. I thought putting down roots meant immobility, but actually, I travel more now than I ever did during those restless years with my ex. The difference? I have an anchor to return to, a home to be homesick for. Last month, I took myself on a solo train trip, no itinerary, no panic searching for Wi-Fi or the next sublet, just me, a journal, and the ability to come back when I felt ready. In a very surreal turn, out of the blue, my ex sent an email. He'd stumbled on an article about my workshops in an alumni newsletter, Small World, Smaller Internet. His words were, predictably, detached, analytical, but I could read between the lines. He said, "You always did want a place to call home." There was a note of wistfulness, maybe regret, but no anger. I closed the laptop, smiled, and let the feeling pass. So that's where I am now, a house I own, dinners that spill into midnight, 3 cats, more friends than I ever thought grown-ups could make, and a career built on helping others step into their own unknown. Sometimes I mourn the lost time, the years spent trying to fit myself into someone else's dream. But more often, I just marvel at the fact that the crazy choices, the leaps, the risks, the abrupt left turns, led not to chaos, but to the exact kind of peace I'd nearly forgotten I wanted. The truest thing? I didn't so much find the life I hungered for. I built it, the way you build a bonfire, one little branch at a time, with nothing but stubborn hope and a few loyal cats to keep me honest. Update 5. Sometimes I still look around and wonder if any of this is truly real. 6 years ago, I could not have imagined what it would be like to have the same postal code for more than a year, let alone be recognized as a pillar of the community. Their words, not mine. I still smirk every time our neighborhood WhatsApp group tags me for advice on local events, as though my secret superpower is knowing the cheapest wine at the corner shop. But the world didn't slow down just because my life felt like it finally had. In fact, The last 12 months have been so full of the new and the strange and the utterly unexpected that sometimes I get a little dizzy. I'll try, and probably fail, to keep this brief, but here goes. First, remember my new career, the writing and storytelling workshops? Well, that has quietly, gobsmackingly, become big. Last fall, I took a phone call over my lunch break from someone with an intimidatingly crisp accent, a program director for an international publishing conference. They'd heard about the work I'd been doing with women in transition, loved it, and asked if I'd like to design a seminar on narratives of reinvention. Cue a month of imposter syndrome, frantic scribbling, and the very weird sensation of booking a flight and hotel for work, and not because I was being dragged into yet another round of expat roulette. The event was intimidating, glamorous in a way that might have embarrassed a younger me into hiding in the loo. But the second my panel started, sitting shoulder to shoulder with authors I'd only ever admired from afar, I realized every woman in the room was here for the same reason. All of us had, in our own way, broken out of something: marriage, mediocrity, expectation. The hour became less about writing and much more about forging hope from the messiest bits of life. They asked me to come back next year, not as a panelist, but as a keynote. If old Oop could see me now, she'd choke on her cold coffee. Second, the fostering grew. My reputation as a cat whisperer with a soft spot for emotional disasters has made my home something of an unofficial way station. Some of the neighborhood kids, inspired by my own overgrown trio, have taken to returning strays they find directly to Miss Oop's home for the soft and unloved. That's how one 5-year-old described us at the last block party: "My weekends are equal parts therapy, mild chaos, and completely soaked in fur." And now, in a truly unpredictable twist, I'm co-running a weekend animal therapy group with the chef, still a marvel of calm, especially considering how one of our current fosters moonlights as her kitchen sous chef, a streak of fur underfoot while she preps onions for the charity. We've hosted stress student study hours with purring lap warmers and partnered with the hospice around the corner to bring some of the gentler cats to folks who miss animals. Which brings me, awkwardly, but inevitably, to grief. This year, my eldest cat, the matriarch of our rescue menagerie, one of the two who'd traveled the world and survived every move, died. Not dramatically, just quietly in her sleep, on my pillow, the night after a wild thunderstorm. The hole she left is sharp, but her passing wove something unexpected into the little network of people around me. Neighbors stopped by with flowers, one handed me a sketch she'd drawn after seeing my gray girl sunning herself in the window. The book club, in their unique style, held a wake where everyone read something about loss and ate cake like it was an Olympic event. One of the teenagers I mentor through my writing work showed up with a mug that read "Morning is just love with nowhere to go." I cried, laughed, and realized that I finally, unarguably, belonged. Work, friendship, and loss are oddly intertwined now. The city councilor's assistant, not satisfied with convincing me to speak publicly, pushed me, gently but relentlessly, to apply for a micro-grant for local artists, which I ended up winning. The project? A guided story walk through our neighborhood. Participants stop at marked points, shops, stoops, the bus stop where Mrs. Gregory lost her hat and created a meme, and listen to short audio stories, recorded in the voices of the people who actually live here. We finished piloting the route last month, and now I can't make a trip to the bakery without someone flagging me down to ask, "Aren't you the one?" I'm not famous, but for the first time, I feel unconcealed, unhidden. The relationship is still steady. The chef and I took our first truly grown-up holiday to Portugal, the kind where you rent a car and immediately get lost in a roundabout, and neither of you cares. We hiked clifftops, argued gently about the merits of father music, and watched the sun dip below the horizon without a single where to next panic. On the last night, over grilled sardines and cheap wine, she asked if maybe I'd like to move into her slightly larger, plant-choked flat around the corner. After a beat, I surprised both of us by saying no. For now, because I adore my home, the cats, the new network I'm building, and because, for the first time, I don't feel like I have to scramble after someone else's idea of next. We laughed and agreed to let life keep looping us closer together, brick by brick, not all at once. There are other things, too, smaller but no less meaningful. I keep my foster failures, hang photos on the mantle, and still host impromptu salons and weekend writing workshops. My parents have integrated further into the community. My mom started volunteering at the animal shelter, partly, I think, to keep tabs on which cats are making their way into my house, and which might be headed to hers. Friction remains, but it's funny now, less scraping and more the gentle wear of stones in a river. I see my own patterns a mile away, and sometimes I choose differently. The craziest part is really this: there is nothing crazy, not anymore. The breathtaking turns, the dropped certainties, the wide, wild unknowns. They've somehow been stitched together into something vastly, gloriously ordinary. Adventure used to mean change for change's sake. Now, it feels like showing up, over and over, for the life I've made. I don't pinch myself anymore to see if I really belong. I know I do. The void I once feared, the one that said, "What if you do all this, and you're still alone?" never materialized. Instead, I built a web and caught the world. Friends, love, loss, laughter, rescue cats, the persistent scent of scones, and stories, always stories, waiting to be told. So, yes, the update is that everything changed, and everything stayed deeply, beautifully the same. Not because time fixed me, but because I stopped running and let the world catch up. If young me ever reads this, sweaty-palmed, dreading another move, calculating if there's enough in the account to cover plane fare, here's all I'd say.